The Dallas Cowboys are headed to camp without CeeDee Lamb reporting. The Los Angeles Rams reworked Matthew Stafford's contract to make sure he would report on time. And I'm Courtney Cronin, reporting on time for my fill-in hosting duties. Big week for me, making the awful announcing top 10 Around the Horn panelists of all time. Mina, I assume I'll see you at the banquet. David Dennis Jr., good luck next year, maybe? Let's go around the horn.
Man,
That's a great list. Really well done.
That'd be your +1.
Stop the steal. Recount.
All right, report day in Oxnard for the Dallas Cowboys, who are not expecting Pro Bowl wide receiver CeeDee Lamb to show up for the start of training camp. Lamb was not on the team's charter flight to Southern California on Tuesday and hasn't been with the Cowboys at all this offseason while awaiting a new contract. The former 17th overall pick will make just under $18 million on his fifth-year option the season after hauling in a league-best 135 receptions for 1,749 yards and 12 touchdowns. Both of those are career highs. So the rare training camp hold in an era where those daily fines of $50,000 just can't be magically forgiven when an agreement is struck. So Kevin Clark, I start with you here. What do the Cowboys have on their hands as they begin training camp?
They have a mess of their own creation. They should hypothetically be competing for a Super Bowl this year, but that's pretty much true every year. They've had a Super Bowl roster a bunch of times over the past 2 decades, and they never even make the conference championship. A lot of that is because of the distractions and the way that they handle their business. And we're seeing this here. They have 3 superstars going into contract uncertainty type of years. Obviously, Dak Prescott, obviously Micah Parsons is due the next couple of years for big money, and they have that all unsettled because of the way they approach this. Stars, the market for them never goes down. You're always going to be paying more the longer you wait. CeeDee Lamb is not Justin Jefferson, but every single day they wait, he gets closer and closer because the market is always moving up. They need to figure this out. They need to handle their business. In short, they need to stop being the Cowboys.
It's a tall order that you're asking Jerry Jones and company. Kevin Blackistone, I was under the impression that the day after Justin Jefferson got his big contract extension that we would have seen this signed, sealed, and delivered for CeeDee Lamb. Why are we at this point with the Dallas Cowboys and their star receiver?
Because CeeDee Lamb saw that and he said, I'm out the door because I was drafted in the same first round with this guy, Justin Jefferson. I put up incredible numbers and I should be getting paid just like him. So instead you have this uncertainty. I will say this about the Cowboys though, right? This has been their modus operandi for the last several seasons, off seasons it seems. We had this with Ezekiel Elliott, right? And he got signed at the very last minute. So I suspect that Jerry Jones and CeeDee Lamb will have a face-to-face meeting very soon and get this all straightened out because they cannot go into the season with all this uncertainty that KC just laid out, including the coaching staff, by the way, which could wind up going out the door.
So there's history on our side here, David Dennis Jr. I think that KB brings up the point of what happened with Ezekiel Elliott in 2019. Decides to spend some time in Cabo, not report to training camp. He ends up getting paid. Of course, we see this last year with Zach Martin, holds out a little bit, gets the deal he wants. Does CeeDee Lamb have to follow that same sort of trajectory in order to get paid?
That seems to be the modus operandi for getting your money for the Cowboys. Now, the big picture is this is what the Cowboys' definition and Jerry Jones' definition of all in is. The end of last season, he said we're going all in, and that seems to mean not really doing much in the offseason, not picking up important free agents, not signing a single one of the 3 most important people in your franchise that you need to sign, and not making any really substantial moves and coming back with a team that, yes, will probably win a lot of regular season games. They've won more regular season games in the last 3 seasons than any other team but the Chiefs. They will look good at some point in the middle of the season. Kevin Clark may even come on here and call them the best team in the league or something like that. And then by playoff time, they'll lose to either the 49ers or the Rams or somebody else. And we're going to do this over and over again because that's what the Cowboys have been for the last 3 decades.
Self-inflicted drama is something that they know all too well. Mina Kimes, how do you see this mess, if you want to call it that, affecting them at the start of training camp?
Yeah, the only explanation for the Cowboys' behavior this offseason is that Jerry Jones loves the drama, which honestly might be true. There's probably something to that because otherwise there's no really clear rationale for it. Kevin mentioned the Ezekiel Elliott contract that dragged on for a while. And you could argue that the Cowboys were burnt by that because that contract obviously did not age well, although Ezekiel Elliott is back with the team. But I would point out that that contract was very controversial at the time. Everyone knew, not everybody, but a lot of folks, myself included, questioned it. Nobody is arguing they shouldn't pay CeeDee Lamb. It's about as obvious as it gets in today's NFL. And while Justin Jefferson is the better wide receiver, I think most people agree with that. You could argue that CeeDee Lamb is more important to his football team. ESPN has a great metric called wide receiver score, where they look at wide receivers and evaluate them based on their openness, their catching ability. CeeDee Lamb was 4th last year, which I think is pretty accurate. The next Cowboys receiver was in the high 80s. That was Brandon Cook. If you take CeeDee Lamb out of this offense, they're screwed. CeeDee Lamb knows that. They don't have any leverage over him because of his importance to this football.
Okay, so that was where I wanted to go with this next, because we know they've got to pay CeeDee Lamb. They have to pay Dak Prescott. I know there's Micah Parsons in that mix, too. Mina, who in terms of the pecking order here has to be paid first in order for this team to contend for a Super Bowl?
Well, I guess Lamb is probably the right answer because there's a couple contracts looming there, but you could argue Dak, there's no incentive for waiting there, or pardon me, there's no advantage because Tua Tagovailoa and Jordan Love are going to get big contracts, and the longer you wait, as we've all been discussing, your contract only goes up. I think both of those two players should get paid sooner rather than later. The Cowboys have dragged their feet for far too long.
And because we're talking about someone else's money, we're going to give you a little... One of my favorite graphics. That's the one that Tony usually gives me when I'm trying to dole out other people's dollars here on Around the Horn. All right, we move on. Elsewhere in Southern California, it's not an extension, but a contract adjustment for Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford, who reported to training camp after reworking his deal on Tuesday. Now that their quarterback's contract issues are settled, the Rams can turn their attention to figuring out life after Aaron Donald. No pressure. The 3-time Defensive Player of the Year retired this offseason, leaving some pretty massive shoes on defense. Mina, to you, how do you see the Rams or size up what they're going to be in 2024?
I see them as, once again, a playoff team, largely because of this offense, which is why Matthew Stafford deserved more money. This was an offense that when Stafford was healthy and Kyren Williams played, was tied with the San Francisco 49ers last year for the most efficient offense in football. They were a juggernaut. Cooper Kupp, hopefully coming back healthy, only adds to that. Stafford himself finished 4th league-wide in EPA per play. When you look at the contract extension, and we don't know what the money looks like, I think you can look at it two ways. One of which is he might be retiring at some point, doesn't have a lot of guaranteed money after this year, so he wants that pushed up. You can also look at it as a player who deserves to be paid more because he is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. The Rams, I think, are going to be a team led by him and the offense, so this reflects that.
He's got a $31 million base salary this year. That's an underpay, David Dennis Jr., for a Pro Bowl quarterback who threw for just about 4,000 yards last year in his second Pro Bowl season. What do you make of Matthew Stafford in this situation? But the Rams is a big picture team now, heading into training camp with several questions.
The Rams, I think this season are going to look like the team they looked like at the second half of that season, that 7-1 team that was an offensive monster that people could not stop. Again, that Stafford-Williams combination was formidable. Williams, top 3 running back in the league, even after missing 4 games. Stafford, top 3 in yards and QBR and all that in those last 8 games. And, you know, I know they're missing Donald, but when they won the Super Bowl, they were the 20th defense at the time. Their bread and butter has always been that offense. And with Stafford and that core there, I think that they have the pieces to be in the playoffs and be a really, really tough out.
KB, you agree?
I agree, and let's talk about the defense for a second without Aaron Donald, because last year they had at least 3 players with 8 sacks or more, which was a rarity in the league. So they've been preparing for this day for quite some time, and I never doubt Matthew Stafford. Been watching him play since he was in high school at Highland Park, just in the enclave of Dallas. He's deserving of everything he gets. Cooper Kupp, remember, he missed 5 games last year. So with him being healthy, as Mina mentioned, that just adds to their offensive prowess. So I look for them to be nothing less than what they were a season ago.
Kevin Blackistone was there. He watched Matthew Stafford. Kevin Clark, I know you've watched Matthew Stafford as well. Do you think that this Rams team is headed towards the postseason. I know David Dennis Jr. threw that in there, KB as well. Is that their trajectory in the NFC West?
Absolutely. They're a playoff team, but not a kind of top-line Super Bowl contender. It's funny that you joked and said no pressure about replacing Aaron Donald, because no pressure is what happened when Aaron Donald was off the field last year. They had a 33% pressure rate when he was on the field. When he came off, it was 23%. That is a dramatic difference. However, Jordan Rodriguez of The Athletic reported a couple of weeks ago that the reason the Rams went with Jared Verse and Braden Fisk were their first 2 picks in the draft is because both of them coming out of Florida State, they had a natural chemistry. And I think that what they thought, according to The Athletic, is that there was going to be maybe some growing pains in that defensive line, but having a natural chemistry could help replicate what Aaron Donald was able to do. Young guys who be caught up to speed because of the comfort, the sort of knowing where each other is going to be, that sort of thing. I think that's important. They also address safety with Cam Kitchens from Miami in the 3rd round. Addressing the middle of that defense with the first 3 picks is important. I think the defense is okay this year. That's enough to get them in the playoffs.
All right, Mina, I'll give you the final word. Is this a playoff team?
Absolutely. The defense just needs to be average, and you can't replace Aaron Donald, but they have thrown resources both in the draft and in the draft last year. Kobe Turner and Byron Young were excellent on the defensive line. They could take another step forward as well.
All right, there is our horn. Up next in Buy or Sell, I'm going to tell you what's in Bryce Young's backpack. National panel, any guesses?
NCAA 25.
Well, it looks like the 20th anniversary around the horn backpack that I have that I put on at training camp that makes me look like a 7th grader as well. Fire Sal's coming up next. David Dennis Jr. in the lead, Mina Kimes, Kevin Clark with 10, Kevin Blackistone trailing with 7. Buy or sell now. Bryce Young giving first day of middle school vibes on Panthers report day. New Jays, new backpack, new Bryce? After an underwhelming rookie season, Carolina general manager Dan Morgan says the former #1 pick is on a mission and that the Panthers are going to, quote, do everything in our power to surround him with the best players, the best protections. Mina, buy or sell that from Dan Morgan?
I'll say about Bryce what I said to Kevin Clark after his first round the horn. There's nowhere to go but up because last year was a disaster, but it wasn't entirely a disaster of his own making. The offensive line couldn't protect him. The wide receivers weren't getting open. The Panthers have invested in both of those things. I think the biggest question is going to be whether the new head coach, Dave Canales, can get Bryce to play faster the way he did with Baker Mayfield last year.
David Dennis Jr., does he take a big step forward, a medium step forward, a small step forward? How do you see this playing out for Bryce Young?
Well, he had 5.5 yards per pass, was 4th worst in the league last year, so I'm hoping he takes some sort of step forward. But I'm buying the fact that this is very relatable because when I graduated when I finished college and got a first real job that first year, I wanted to go back to school too. So this makes a whole lot of sense. I feel it, even though he's probably better off paying his bills than I was at that time. But I do think that this Carolina Panthers team is still going to be very bad, but he's going to see some improvement, which is exactly where you want him to be.
Kevin Blackistone, you picking up what David Dennis Jr. is putting down?
Yes, it'll be better for Bryce Young this year. #1, Dave Canales 2 seasons ago turned Geno Smith into a Pro Bowler, throwing for over 4,000 yards for the first time in his career. Did the same thing with Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay. So he's a quarterback whisperer. And I'm not going to criticize a guy for having a backpack full of probably books that he's studying. That's a good thing if you're his teammate.
That's interesting. I thought that everything was digital nowadays, and he's got his iPad and all of the digital technology that they use inside the facility. Kevin Clark, what are you buying? What are you selling?
First of all, Mina, unlike Bryce Young, I won in my first appearance on this show. I am a winner. Having said that, listen, here's my headline on the Carolina Panthers. Not that bad. Not as bad as you think. Bryce Young had some really bad stats last year. On some metrics, he was the 36th best quarterback in the NFL last year. Well, by talent, he shouldn't be that. He's a lot better than that. I'm not saying he's going to be Mahomes or Burrow, but he can be average. When he had under 2.5 seconds to throw, when he had a quick release, he was league average. I think Dave Canales knows that. He'll give him easy answers. I think this is going to end up being fine. There's credibility on that roster now. There's better pass catchers. The line, they overpaid for some guys on the line. This will be better, if not great.
An interesting slogan, Carolina Panthers 2024. Not that bad. I don't know how you're pitching that to season ticket holders, but that's why you're not the head of marketing for the Carolina Panthers, Kevin Clark. Moving on.
Yes.
The U.S. women's national team coach Emma Hayes addressing Olympic expectations and the New World Order. She's cautioning fans that it's, quote, disrespectful to talk about the U.S. in a way that assumes they'll be in Paris for the tournament's final or even semifinal. Kevin Blackistone, how do you hear Coach Hayes?
I hear it as a dose of honesty. Remember the last time you saw this collection of women, they were losing earlier than any team had lost for the U.S. in the World Cup. And now they come in with their youngest roster ever. And you look, they're ranked 5th in the world right now. And the rest of the world, especially Spain, is looking so much more dominant. So, yeah, this is just truth talking.
David Dennis Jr., how do you hear her?
I hear her telling the truth, a little bit too much of the truth. She could have given a little bit of a pep talk, a little bit of positivity about this team, but it's real. This is legit what she's saying, especially they're coming off a 0-0 draw, looking pretty bad against Costa Rica. So they're stumbling into the Olympics, but she's absolutely right. This team is not where they were. They seem to be in sort of a rebuild with the young roster, and they're way behind that sort of top 4 talent in the Olympics.
Yeah, God, everybody's being so negative. We got Kevin Clark just dunking on the Carolina Panthers for 2024. This coach, Emma Hayes, saying, well, everybody slow your roll. Mina Kimes, maybe we could use a little bit more pep in their step going to the Olympics?
It's kind of like the reverse Ted Lasso, right? Like an American coaches British soccer players with relentless positivity. We bring a British coach and she tells us we're actually not that great. She is correct. We are 5th. U.S. is 5th in the world for a reason. But I actually am more confident in this team than the last Olympic one because that was very much a team in transition. The young players hadn't quite arrived. They have arrived now, and I think we're going to see those results.
And Kevin Clark, how do you hear it?
Somewhere, Steve Kerr is upset he didn't think about this excuse that the world has gained on us because the basketball team needs some excuses right now. Having said that, when you take the job as head coach of the U.S. women's national team, you understand, sure, maybe the gap with the rest of the world is shrinking, but your job, the literal job description, is to restore that gap and maintain that gap. So I actually don't like the excuse making on the front end. Your expectation is to win everything put in front of you when you have this much talent. I understand they're 5th in the world, but the expectation should be winning in every scenario with this team.
All right, my job, my expectations on this show to close the gap within scoring. So we say goodbye to Kevin Clark, goodbye to Kevin Blackistone. Just let it be known, I am the first guest host on the show to get that right on a first try. It is David Dennis Jr. and Mina Kimes. Showdown coming up next. Bye, Kevin. Mina Kimes, David Dennis Jr., good luck in Showdown. Bill Belichick's options to continue coaching in the NFL were sparse, but come to find out via The Athletic's Tim Kawakami's podcast, the San Francisco 49ers offered the 6-time Super Bowl champ a spot on staff. Kyle Shanahan said, quote, whatever he wanted to do, including the defensive coordinator role, later filled by Nick Sorensen. Mina, should Belichick have taken Shanahan up on that offer?
Well, it would have only added to his obviously unimpeachable legacy. I mean, last year, Bill Belichick had the most injured defense in football, and they still finished top 10. What he could have done with the San Francisco 49ers defense would have been a joy to watch.
I respect Shanahan. You miss every shot you don't take. Why not ask Bill Belichick to do this? But at the same hand, you don't ask Beyonce to be your backup singer, dude. Have some respect. Bill Belichick needs to be a head coach somewhere.
Well, he did say he could have whatever job that he wants. I didn't hear the head coaching job was off limits, but we digress. Bill Belichick remains on the sideline this year. We'll split the point. Moving on, what are those? Nike displayed this prototype for Victor Wembanyama in Paris. The shoe was inspired by Wemby's, quote, love for science fiction and whatever the hell a bismuth stone is, which is what he wore on draft night. So, David, I ask again, what are those?
A lazy excuse for a shoe. I don't want AI making my shoe. Get Tinker Hatfield out there and draw up something dope for the greatest athlete that we're going to see in basketball for years to come.
Yeah, the only AI I want in basketball is the guy who played for the Sixers. The prompt for this looks like it was fried egg. It's honestly inexplicable to me.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of them. Next panelist who can tell me what a bismuth stone is gets a point. But Mina, I will go ahead and give you the edge here. All right, showdown 3. Just like their on-field product, the Detroit Lions once again created intrigue, this time with a massive podium setup for Coach Dan Campbell to hold his first training camp press conference. Look at the size of this thing. Like, Dan Campbell's a former NFL tight end, 6'5", 265. Look at my podium here, this lectern in studio for Around the Horn. I think that that's at least twice the size of what Dan Campbell has. Mina, too big, too little, or just right?
It's just right when you consider Ben Johnson actually lives inside of that lectern. That's how he stayed. Free housing.
I think it's absolutely perfect. He looks like a winner, so much so that I got my own lectern here that I'm going to do the rest of the show from behind because I'm going to look like a winner too.
Oh, man. You bring props, you get the point. David Dennis Jr., a top 10 panelist in all of our hearts. Take the FaceTime.
Courtney Cronin, this is why you should have been number 1 on the awful announcing list. First of all, Odell Beckham is a, prize celebrated NFL star. He's won a Super Bowl, but now he only has the second most important trophy in his family as his brother Cordell Beckham has now become the winner of Love Island USA. Shout out to him and shout out to Love Island USA.
Well, spoiler alert. My first attempt here. Going to Meg the Stallion this. Take a step forward. 23 and a half hour break. See you tomorrow. I whiffed.